happy Friday. I think it's high time. I know I could use a Friday. I don't know about you. But, and then hopefully we'll have a decent weekend. Come back for one more week and then spring break. So my goal for today is to discuss, of course, the homework we have for today on transposition. And then after that, I would like to finish our discussion on transposition by talking about how to, if you're given an actual sound, how to actually write the proper transpose note for a transposing instrument. So that when the instrumentalist reads that transpose note, the actual sound that you wanted to come out of the horn actually goes. So I've got your assignments returned to you. And let's take a look at the homework that you have for today straight away. The handout, this is my first transposition handout I have for you guys. You've got some analysis of a Brahms clarinet sonata, and you've got to transpose, or you've got to show me what the actual sounding pitches are for the clarinet in B flat. And then over here you've got some score that actually comes from the back side, that you're supposed to list the concert pitches or the sounding pitches here based on how it was written on the other side. So, well, let's first of all it doesn't matter if it's section 1 or 2. Does anyone have any questions about something on this assignment or something on this handout? You feel pretty good about your analysis here? And I'm assuming if you got the notes, the actual sounding notes for the clarinet, I'm assuming if you got the first two measures correct, the rest of it should be correct as well, because you're working with the appropriate interval in the appropriate direction. Okay. Last call for questions before we move on. Very well. Then let's do it this way. Keep your homework out, and I'd like to give you a half-sheet copy from your homework text, please. I'm only going to ask you for certain things on your homework, so you don't have to fill everything out. Shouldn't take very long. So we'll do that, and then we'll take a closer look at the homework answers. All right, let's take a look at the answers now. The worksheet, starting with section 1, Brahms Clarinet Sonata. How about we look at the clarinet part first? And I don't feel I need to show you the whole clarinet part, because as I said, I think if you got started correctly with the right interval in the right direction, the rest would probably fall into place. So, the actual sound of the clarinet, when the notation is transposed for it on the top highest staff, we know we learned last class that the clarinet in B flat sounds a major second lower than written. So we have to go down a major second or a whole step. So if the first notated pitch for the clarinet is D, the actual sound that will be coming out of the horn when the clarinetist plays that D is actually going to be C, a whole step lower. B flat would become A flat, that's the actual sound. G becomes F, and so on and so forth. Just wanted to make sure along the middle and the end here, did you get a natural on your E? Because if the notated pitch is F sharp, technically a major second below that is E natural. And I think you've got flats in your key signature, so you have to override the key signature by placing the natural there. And there's also one more of those later on in the passage. So you probably want to be natural right there. Does anyone have any questions about how to find the actual sound for clarinet in B flat given its transposed notation? Okay. Let's take a look at the Roman numerals, if you can see them from where you are. So the first chord in the piano apparently doesn't have a third to it, it's just got F and C. But because it's the first chord and we know we're in F minor, I think we can safely assume that it's a minor 1. The next chord is a very rare, strange chord. I actually prefer that you do not write these. We stay away from 6 chords in first inversion. The only way I can explain that is because Brahms was a late Romantic composer, and they tended to start doing what they wanted. They started to break with tradition, I guess I should say, by that time, until finally when the late 19th century and the early 20th century came around, then many composers just went their own direction completely. So, but anyways, after the 6-6, that strange chord, then you got a minor 4, a 5, 7, and a 6. And then, was it the next batch? I think I asked you about these chords on the quiz. So 5, 5, 4, 2, a couple 1-6s, the 2 half diminished 7, and a 5. Any questions about those? Yes?
Sorry, in a minor key, is 2 not capitalized?
Nope. 2 is never capitalized, actually. Yeah. Yeah, think back to a couple classes ago, especially with respect to the 2 7s. In major keys, the 2-7 is minor, minor. So it would still be a lowercase Roman numeral. In minor keys, the 2-7 is half diminished. And so since this passage is in a minor key, F minor, then we expect the 2-7 to be half diminished, and indeed it is. If you look at the notes there, G, B flat, D flat, and F, that is a half diminished 7. Then just quickly looking at some of these pitches that you had to, the sounding pitches you had to interpret over here on the right side. Does the oboe transpose? No. So you could just copy the oboe pitches from the reverse side of your page, right? No thinking required, basically, just copy it over. But the clarinet in A, that is a transposing instrument, and we know that it sounds a magnitude lower than written. So I'm hoping for the first note you got for the clarinet in A, where am I, right here? Yeah. You got an A. And then you didn't have to do the rest of these beats on the quiz. If you wanted to, you could, but Then in the first full measure, you have F sharp and D. These are the sounding pitches, based on what was transposed notation on the flip side for the clarinet line. Okay, the bassoon, is that transposed? Nope. So you just have to copy that in, as it was on the flip side. The horn in D is down a minor seventh. I think I told you that. So just look at the notation on the other side and calculate the interval. Just go down a minor seventh for all those pitches. And you should end up with the sounding pitches to begin with in the horns are D and F sharp. And then they finish off with A and E, the sounding pitches. Trumpet transposes as well. You have to, it sounds a major second higher than written. So the first notes for the trumpet should be D and F sharp. Those are actual sounding pitches. Timpani, violin. Does the viola transpose? Nope. So all you have to do is just copy in the pitches from the other side. And I think that was all we had, right? Any questions about anything on this? Very well. I will do my best to get these in-class quizzes graded and back to you by Monday. Before we start getting into the new material that I want to today, I want to just do a very quick review with a few of the transposing instruments we talked about last class. And I have 4 Greek examples up here on the board. Eventually, you know those 7 transposing instruments we talked about last class, eventually I want you to have memorized how they transpose, their definition. For instance, the English horn sounds a perfect fifth lower than written. So whenever we get to the next test, whenever that is, you'll need to have just the transposition information for these 7 instruments memorized. So I just explained here, the English horn, it sounds a perfect fifth lower than written. If there's a notated or written A flat for the English horn, what is going to be the sounding pitch coming out of the instrument? Well, perfect fifth below an A flat, and you should get D flat, right? So D flat's going to be the pitch coming out of the horn. Down the perfect fifth. Trumpet in D. Does anyone remember how this one transposes? Good. A major second sounds a major second higher than written. So what would be the sounding pitch if I'm given a written C sharp? D sharp. Major second higher. That's right. The clarinet in A. Anyone recall how that one sounds?
It's going to be a minor third below. So that would be
C sharp. Yes. Yep. Clarinet in A sounds a minor third lower than written. A minor third below an E is a C sharp, right? Because E down to C natural is just a regular major third, C to E. So C sharp to E must be a minor third. And then the last one, this one I think had, this one had the biggest interval of transposition. How does the alto sax in E flat sound compared to its notated pitch? Okay, say that one more time. It's actually a major sixth. Right, major sixth down. Okay? So, this goes back to last semester. What note is a major sixth below an F sharp? Okay. So that's the sound where the pitch is going to come out of the alto sax. when they see and they read an F sharp. Okay. So, just getting that familiar back in our minds again. What I want to do now is, last class we learned how to determine the actual sound of a transposing instrument, assuming that we were given a written pitch for it. And in order to do that, we learned the interval and direction of transposition for 7 instruments, 4 of which are up here right now. In most cases, the transposition information was this. You could say that the written pitch was higher or above, higher or above the actual sound. Right? For 6 out of those 7 instruments, the written pitch is always higher than the actual sound. What's the only instrument we learned last class where it's flipped?
Clarinet. Oh,
Trumpet in D, yeah. Only with the trumpet in D is the actual sound higher than the written pitch. But let's just stick with this for now because this is what the majority of them were. Okay? Another way to think of that is to, like on the handout I gave you last class, is you see the notated or the written pitch, but we always hear actual sound. All right, now today, what we're going to do is we're going to do the reverse. In other words, we're going to start with an actual sound. And we will need to then determine what notes would need to be written for a transposing instrument to give us that actual sound, produce that actual sound. And again, in 6 out of 7 cases, this relationship can be viewed as this is this. The written pitch is always higher than the actual sound. Okay? So, if we're starting with actual sound right here, to go from actual sound to written notation, what we do is we use the same interval of transposition that we learned for these instruments last class. But what we do is we move or we go in the opposite direction than we did last class for the instrument. So for instance, if I had, let's pick which one do I want to pick? How about a clarinet in B flat? If I have a notated C for a clarinet in B flat, what's the actual sound going to come out of the instrument for clarinet in B flat?
wait, so far that's the written pitch?
Yep, that's the written pitch. B flat, right? Full step low. It's just a matter of what do you want to start with and what do you need to find. That was last class. Well, now, let's say you want the clarinet player, or so let's say you're playing the piano and you're playing a B flat, and you want the clarinet player to play in unison with you. You want the clarinet to actually sound a B flat. What do I need to write for that instrument then so it can produce a B flat? Well, the interval of transposition is the same. It's a major second for a clarinet in B flat, right? But if we're starting down here, don't we just have to go the other direction? So if I went up a major second, I would know I would need to write a C for the transposing instrument. You get this. Make sense? So it's really just a matter of direction. If you know how the written pitch is, where it is in relation to the actual sound for a transposing instrument, and if you know the interval of transposition, it's just a matter of where you are, where do I go? That's what it turns out to be. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. I know from my experience, there are students they'll get their direction mixed around, or they'll not understand what is being asked for. Are they trying to find written pitch? Are they trying to find actual sound? Maybe they're not sure. Let's take another example. we know that the actual sound of a French horn, let's do this for French horn. Put it up here. We know that the actual sound of a French horn is a perfect fifth below its written pitch. So the distance between the notated pitch and the actual sound, this is a perfect fifth for a French horn. Okay. What this means is that we need to write the notes for a French horn a perfect fifth higher than we want them to sound. Right? Because if the French horn, the actual sound is a perfect fifth lower than its written pitch, then all the pitches we write for the French horn need to be a perfect fifth higher than the sound I want. So it's like two sides of the same coin. What information do you have? What are you trying to find? Which direction do you need to go? So, how about a concrete example? Let's say I want the horn to sound in E flat. Actual sound, concert pitch. What note would I need to write for the French horn in order for it to play it all in here in E flat? Yeah. Just go up a perfect fifth. I have to write a B flat for it. A B flat, a perfect fifth high. In other words, if you wanted to look at it in terms of musical staff, which is no problem, let's see, we have the French horn. If I wanted the horn to sound, actually sound this E flat right here, all I have to write for the horn is this B flat right here, perfect fifth higher. That's all there is to it, really. I kind of like to, at least for me, since I'm kind of a visual person, I kind of like to diagram the relationship between written pitch and actual sound this way. And this is the way it is for most all these six out of the 7 instruments. Now this distance, this interval is going to vary depending on the instrument. But in most cases, the written pitch is always going to be above the actual sound. Or you could look at it this way, the actual sound will always be below the written pitch. Okay? So, do you have the handout, one of the handouts I gave you last class that actually looks like this? It says transposing instruments at the top. So, last class, on the top half of this handout, I just wanted you to focus only on the top half because it says when you need to find the actual sound of an instrument, this is what you do. You use these intervals and you go these directions. That's if you're given a notated pitch and you need to find actual sound. But today, now we're actually looking at the bottom half, which is when you need to write for a transposing instrument, or if you need to find the correct transposed or written pitch, this is what you do. You use the same intervals for the instruments that are above, but notice that the direction for all of these is the exact opposite or reverse of the direction on the top half of the sheet. Okay? So, for example, take any of them here. The English horn, if you need to write for it, you write it a perfect fifth above its sounding pitch. And the alto sax, for another example, is written a major sixth above its sounding pitch. So again, I think in any kind of future quiz, test, homework assignment, or anything that has to do with transposition, I think if you know what you're given, and if you know what you need to find, the written pitch or the actual sound, then it really isn't that bad. You just have to remember your interval of transposition and which direction you need to go. Does anyone have any questions about that? Do you still have the other handout sheet? Let me take this one out as well. Where it says instrumental transposition at the top. So today, I'd like to focus on the rightmost box, the one that says situation number 2. And can I have somebody read the you have and the you need? Okay.
You have the sound of the notes you would like performed as a melody you heard when you went to transpose an instrument to play with another, like piano, flute, etc. You need to know how to write the music down for instrumentalist.
Okay. So you see, basically, there's just a circle diagram that reinforces what I've got up here. In 6 out of 7 instrument cases, what we're learning here, the hearing, what you actually hear, actual sound is below what you see, the written or the notated pitch. So solution, it says in bold there, move all the notes the opposite way that the instrument transposes. In other words, whatever direction you learned last class, in order to write the right note for a transposing instrument, you're just going to move the opposite direction this class. For example, an F horn, a French horn, transposes down a perfect fifth. If you are playing a C on the piano, which is a non-transposing instrument, and you want the horn to play with you in unison, then what note would you need to write for the French horn to play? You need to write a G, a perfect fifth higher than C. I don't know if this is sinking in, but let's take a look at this example down in the bottom corner. Now, the key to understanding this, the trick to understanding this, is to look at what these stabs are labeled as. What we hear, that means this must be actual sound, right? And the score for horn, that means notated or written notation. That's what we would see. So this is the French horn case. If we're actually hearing the first 3 pitches out of a horn, E, D sharp, and E, would not the horn, what would have to be written for the horn, would not it be the perfect notes of perfect fifth higher, B, A sharp, and B? And that's exactly what's happening. This down here, this notation is a perfect fifth higher than this, because this is written notation, this is actual sound. Yet. Let's try a few examples that are reverse of what I have up here. Sounding pitch. Another way of saying sounding pitch, of course, is concert pitch. Right? That involves no transposition. If I want a trumpet in B flat or a B flat trumpet to sound a D, and find your knowledge of the interval of transposition. What note would I need to write for the B flat trumpet to read? Not exactly.
Sorry.
E, that's right. It's a major second is the interval, and in this case, the B flat trumpet, our actual sound is lower than the written pitch. So if we want a D to come out of the horn right here, and the distance is a major second, that means if this is D, this has to be E. And it doesn't matter which E you put, as long as it's within the trumpet's range. You can put this E, you could write this E, it doesn't matter. But that would be the notated pitch to get this actual sound. Okay. How about an English horn? The sounding pitch I want English horn player to produce is F sharp. What note do I need to write for it? C sharp is correct. A perfect fifth higher. Right? Because the English horn's transposition interval is a perfect fifth. Same thing as this. Just fill in the space with a perfect fifth, and you'll get, if this is F sharp, this has to be C sharp. How about, oops, I don't want to give you that. Alto sax. I'll just put sax in E flat. I want the alto sax to sound a B flat. What pitch do I need to write for the saxophonist?
G.
That's right, G. A major sixth height. It could be that G, it could be the G above. I'm not specifying the octave. Oh boy, and then the last one. Now this one's a little bit wonky. It's backwards. Because the trumpet in D sounds a major second higher than written, in order to write for it, I'm going to have to write below the actual sound. Does that make sense? It's just the flip-flop of this. So if I want the trumpet in D to sound a G, it makes sense that I would need to write a note that's a major second lower than a G, because it's going to sound a major second higher. What note is a major second below a G?
F.
That's right, there's plenty F. So that's the note I would have to write. The trumpet and D player would see that and play it, but a G, a whole step above, would come out. And that's the only one, the trumpet and D, where this relationship is inverted or switched. Okay. Questions so far? Then finally, let's deal a little bit with key signatures a little more in detail. Key signatures, you may recall last class I said they actually transpose by the same interval and in the same direction as the notes do for each of the 7 respective instruments. Okay, so for example, let's say a clarinet in A has a melody written for it in the key of E flat major. Let me put that right here. The melody, and I won't put any notes here, but this is, pretend there's a melody here that's written or notated for the clarinet A in E flat major. The actual melody, or the concert key, is going to be what major key? If it's notated in E flat major, how does the clarinet A transpose again?
Down a minor third.
That's right, down a minor third, right? Because we know that for the clarinet A, the actual sound is a minor third lower than its written pitch. So if it's notated in E flat major, what key is a minor third below E flat? C major, right? So I would actually need no flats, no sharps. And I'm saying if a melody is notated or written on a staff for a clarinet A to play in E flat, the actual key that we're going to hear is going to be C major. And a pianist, a non-transposing instrument, would have to play in C major in order to agree with the clarinet in order to harmonize. All right, let's try another one. Let's say that the actual sound of a melody is in the key of G major. And we're still dealing with the clarinet A. The actual sound of a melody is in the key of G major, 1 sharp. In what key would the melody need to be written in for the clarinet A to make it sound in G major? Again, what's our magic interval for the clarinet A? It's a minor third. This time though, I'm given concert key actual sound, what we're hearing. How do I figure out what the notated key, what the written key needs to be? Yeah, go ahead.
So you go up a minor third, which would be B flat.
Okay, B flat major. And what is the key signature for B flat major?
B and B flat.
That's right. So I want the clarinet A to sound in G major along with all my string instruments, piano, and all these other non-transposing instruments. Then I need to write the music for the clarinet A in B flat major. Okay. So again, I can't stress enough, it's a matter of knowing the interval of transposition and then knowing the direction. What are we given? Which one of these two things do we need to find? Written pitch or actual sound? All right, now, we've got one or two more things depending on how much time we have. On your handout that says instrumental transposition, go to the back side. And let's look at the very bottom example, which looks kind of like this. I don't think we've done this one yet. In fact, I think we've only done one. Okay. Could I have someone read this scenario in italics for this example?
You hear this great melody that your superior ear-training abilities allow you to dictate. Your finished dictation below. Now you want this played on English horn. What do you write?
So you heard this melody, and your really keen sense of aural skills said, okay, I know what notes those are. And there you write it down. And it looks like it's in the key of A major, right? 3 sharps. What you're hearing, I mean, it's obvious, I guess it's needless to say, it doesn't need to be said, but what you hear is actual sound. So you're hearing this melody in A major. But it says here, you want this played on the English horn. So what notes and key would you have to write for the English horn to read from in order to get this actual sound? Well, yeah, talk us through it.
E major.
Okay, E major is the correct written key. And how did you know that? What interval did you use? Okay, so we know that the English horn sounds a perfect fifth lower than written. I did with all my markers. So if the concert key or the actual sounding key is A major, then I have to write the notes for it a perfect fifth higher in the key of E major. So on the blank staff over there, what's the key signature for E major? What are you going to put in there? 4 sharps. That's right, 4 sharps. I don't want to take the rest of it. All right, now, the rest of it, basically you're home free, right? Because now you know which direction you're going and you know what interval you need to use. So if the first 2 notes of actual sound over here are E and F sharp, what are the first 2 notes you're going to write?
B and C.
Sharp, that's right. A perfect fifth higher. B and C sharp. In fact, well, you don't have to transpose the 8th rest, right? Rest don't transpose. You don't have to write it higher instead. You see it right where it is. Okay, so the first 2 notes, B and C sharp, that means the next 2 notes are going to be B and G sharp, right? All the notes, you just move up exactly a perfect fifth. And you've got your melody written out correctly for an English horn player to produce it in the key that you heard it in.
So once you have the key, and if there's no accidentals added to the original, you don't have to
Right.
you should just assume that it's
Right, if you don't have any accidentals notated on individual pitches, and you figure out the key first and you put it the correct written key signature, you should be okay. You shouldn't need any special accidental. But if one of the notes in the original has an accidental, then chances are you're going to need an accidental in your what you're converting it to. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what yours looks like. Does yours look something like that? Okay. Any questions about how to get this? All right. Now, it doesn't matter if you look at this one in E major, if you look at the original notated. Oh, no, yeah. Don't look at that. I got the answer. Oh. If we're in E major, do you see how it starts on sol la? In the key of E major. Does anyone know what that melody is? Using your Carl Smith? It goes sol la, sol mi, do la, sol. I think you guys can figure that out. If you established a tonic and you found where sol was and you tried to cite some, I think you can figure it out. All right, one last thing to do, and that is, but we won't do the one on the right, let's do the box in the middle. The box in the middle wants to read the italicized scenario for us. Okay, go ahead.
You are proposing a quartet for snare drum, kazoo, B-flat trumpet, and violin. In this section, the three melody instruments play in unison. What would the trumpet part look like?
Okay, so we don't have to worry about the snare drum, because that's not a pitched instrument. So we've got a quartet, we're not worried about the snare drum. We've got to deal with kazoo, B-flat trumpet, and violin. And last time I checked, kazoo does not transpose. Thankfully. But we know that the B-flat trumpet is a transposing instrument. And we want all three instruments here, the melody instruments, to play in unison. So you tell me that you can look at the kazoo part or the violin part, it doesn't matter, because neither of those parts transpose. In what key are the violin kazoo parts written? C major. That's actual sound, non-transposing, nothing to do with transposition. Okay. So if they're written in C major, and we're dealing with the B-flat trumpet, I'll get rid of this, and the interval of transposition we should know now is a major second. If the actual key is C major, what key do I need to write the melody in for the B-flat trumpet player? D major, a whole step higher. Now, I know I didn't give you space there because the computer doesn't like it when you don't have anything. But between the treble clef and the common time, could you squeeze in D major's key signature? Because it's supposed to go in between the clef and the time signature. And what is D major's key signature? Two sharps. Good. F sharp, C sharp. All right. Then to finish it off, we've just got a few other pitches. You see how in C major, the notes are sol, mi, fa, sol, do. We'll go to D major, a major second higher, you're going to start on an A, right? And in D major, you're going to write sol, mi, fa, sol, do. So you can look at it, it's going to be A, then it's going to be what? F sharp and G and A, and then it's going to end on a D. Does yours sort of kind of look like this? Oh, I forgot my triplet. Shame on me. I did that. I'll have to change that for next year. Okay, any questions? You're about ready to leave here? Then, let me leave you with your final worksheet, and this on transposition, and this is gonna be due Monday. I think as long as you follow the instructions, you'll be fine, but this is actually, well, you're gonna take what you have written up here, and you're gonna turn it into, yeah, a couple of these lines you're gonna turn into transposed lines written for, Fairhead, B flat, and Horn.
Can I have one more?
You bet. And I guess when you get this, you're welcome to leave, so have a good weekend if I don't see you.